Hi everyone, this is Nancy at Sipping and Painting Hampden. Today we're going to be painting this painting called Northern Lightshow. And just like the rest of our videos, we're going to be using just a basic color palette: yellow, blue, red, white, and black. And just a handful of brushes. I'm going to use a small, medium, and large. We like to make things easy for you. And so you have two options. I'm going to be using a 16 by 20 canvas. You can use whatever, there's a multitude of options for what you can paint on, but any size, feel free to paint on any size. And what I'm going to be doing is I am going to paint on this already black canvas. And if you want to, you can paint on a black canvas, or you can just take a white canvas and cover it with black paint. I happen to have a black canvas laying around, so I just thought that would be easy for today. But go ahead, if you want to stop the video, paint a white canvas black, and then let it dry. Put it on really thinly, so it only takes about 10 minutes to dry, and then we'll be good to go. I'm going to put a little water on my canvas before I paint. And the reason I'm going to do that is this was very dry and dusty, and this is just kind of taking the dust off, but it's also adding some moisture to my canvas, because if I don't add some moisture to my canvas, then my paints might dry out too quickly. Denver is a very dry place where we are, and so I want to make sure that my paints don't dry out too quick, especially in the winter. It's really dry in the winter because the heat's been on. So I am just making sure that there's some water on. You don't have to use a spray bottle. You can just use a little water on your brush. But we just want to make sure that this has a coat of water on it. Now, if you painted a white canvas and it's, and you're letting your paint dry, your black paint dry, do let it dry. Do let it dry. Because we don't want the black paint to be mixing with our colors. All right, so this is not a difficult painting, and I think you're going to have some fun. All right, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to pick up a little bit of, I'm going to do these lights in the background, the northern lights. And so I'm going to pick up a little bit of white on one side of my brush, and then on the other side of my brush, this is a medium flat brush, there's white on one side, yellow on another. And I am going to add some yellow streaks. And you can add them wherever you want, but it's adding that little bit of white to your brush that really makes it so that the yellow shows up. I'm putting them every so often on this painting, but I don't want to make it too orderly, too perfect. So that, notice these two are a little closer together. And maybe I'll put some down here. They're going to go behind some mountains. Why not? Mix it up a little bit. All right, so I have some yellow on there. Notice the angle that I'm going in. Now I'm going to make some green. And I have my yellow and blue next to each other on the plate. So all I have to do is pick up a little bit of white, because remember, if I add a little white to yellow, it shows up better. A little bit of yellow and a little bit of blue. And you don't need much blue when you're mixing green, because blue is generally a very powerful pigment, more so than white. It's a little more opaque, more solid, more pigment in it. So I go easy on the blue until I know just how much I need. And notice I'm not using a lot of paint here. I might have enough paint in this painting to, I might have enough left over to paint two paintings. I don't know, we'll see. All right, so now I'm going to add on some green streaks. And I'm going to put them next to some yellow, and some of it might be even overlapping. And I'm just going to put them the same diagonal. I'm not going to fill in the spaces, because notice I have some other colors in there too. This is pretty fun and pretty easy. And I like to add color. I like to add paint to the sides of my canvas as well. When I do that, that's called a gallery wrap. What that means is that the painting goes all over the sides and the top and the bottom. And so that way you don't have to put it in a frame. It just looks like the painting's been painted all over, because it has. So feel free to do that. Just carry it right on over the sides. Okay. So now I have green and I have yellow. I'm going to clean my brush really well. I have water in a mason jar. You can use water in any kind of container, but do have a cup or so of clean water. And I also have napkins. I let my water do all the work, which means I really wash my brushes a lot in the water. And then if I do that, then I only need the napkins for dabbing to check it. You don't need to waste a tree. I've seen people do that in here. No need. So I'm going to pick up a little bit of white. I'm going to pick up a little bit of red. And I'm going to make a reddish pink color. Pinkish red. It's a pink that's got enough red in it to really have some character. It's not a pale pink. It's a brighter pink. And then I'm going to put some of those streaks in too. And I'm going to try not to overlap the pink and green, because those two together, they don't play so nice together. Pink and yellow do, because pink and yellow together make orange. And so those two play nice together for sure. But pink and green, not so much. It's kind of like if you invited them both to your party and you might say, you know, they might get along okay, but I think I'm going to go listen to their conversation and try to be the intermediary. Maybe they vote differently. Who knows? All right. So, but pink and yellow, they get along fantastic. They just make orange. And they're both beautiful colors. They just want to do their own thing, that's all. All right, so I've got pink, I've got yellow, I've got green, and now all I need is some blue in there. So I saved a little bit of room in there for blue. I'm going to pick up a little bit of paint, white on my brush. And, you know, my brush was still a little dirty, had pink on it, but that's okay, because if they mix, remember, blue is a much more powerful color, so I don't think they're going to mix at all. But if they do, it'll just be slightly purple. That'd be pretty. Blue and pink get along great. They're buddies. Now you don't have to fill in every space. I think I did that a little more in this particular one than in that one, and that's okay. It just depends on your mood. You decide. You can leave some of it black. Why not? Or you can put it bigger. Maybe these are two different nights, different show, different night. Purple and yellow together, they don't get along real well either, purple and yellow. Anytime you mix a blue and a red and a yellow together, you get brown, so you want to avoid that. Don't forget to carry it over the side. On top. Nice, that's a pretty vibrant sky, I think. I would recommend stepping back about 5 feet and just look at your painting from a distance and see if you like it. If you don't like it, you'll know how to tweak it, but you can't really see it when it's close up. Now I have I have the advantage of being able to look into my camera lens every now and then, and that's almost like seeing it farther away. But if you're right up in front of it and you have your nose in your painting like we are now, you really can't see what you're doing, and you'd be surprised how different it looks from 5 feet away. So that's where it needs to look good. If you are just looking at it like this the whole night, you'll never see what it's going to look like from across the room when you hang it on your wall. So that's really where it needs to look good. So get up and always check your work several times in an hour, I would say, and from a few feet away, just so that you can see what you're doing. Okay. All right. So I want to just not kind of went crazy today, huh? That's all right. Okay. So if you went crazy and you put in colors too much or too high, you can always come back in, a little black paint on your brush, and then just make them a little higher, a little more streaky. See that? And no one will ever know. That black just covers it up really nice. Went a little too low? No problem, no problem. Just kind of randomly, not randomly, but not in a straight line. I'm doing the same kind of jaggedy thing that I had going on with the stripes. Back and forth, up and down like that. I'm just covering a little bit at the bottom in case I went too low. I'm going to need to put those mountains in, and they're going to need to contrast a little bit with the black sky. So, and this was also a good opportunity for me to show you how easy it is to fix things. Just let it dry, paint right over it. And then always clean your brush as well, okay? So notice where the horizon line is right there. It was painted on in black. And notice that it's not halfway up. We don't, when we're painting a landscape, we don't want to put our horizon line halfway, because then your eye doesn't know where to look. Your eye will look at it and say, oh, 2 equal halves, I'm not sure where to look first. But if you have the horizon line a little lower or a little higher than midline, then it's a little more soothing to look at it that way. And so you can see here, by having the horizon line lower, the emphasis is on that brilliant sky. That's the focal point. Your eye bounces around, looks at different things, but the focal point is the brightness in the sky. So I want to make sure I have that. Now I'm going to take a little black paint on my brush, and I'm going to make a line about there. This is obviously several inches on my 16 by 20 canvas. This is several inches below midline. Just depends on what size canvas you have. But see, you know, it's maybe if you divide it into thirds, something like that, and it's a third. All right, so I've got my black on there, and I've got a bunch of black on my brush, so I'll just brush it on there to get rid of it, because if I don't, I'll just muddy the water. And my canvas is black, so who knew? All right. Now I can clean my brush. I'm going to put on those mountains. You see those mountains? And those mountains are made underneath. They're like a pinky purple, and then they have a little blue on the top. So to make a pinky purple, I'm going to take a little bit of blue and a bunch more red. A lot more red because blue is powerful. Remember, red, not so much in paint. And then a little white so that I can lighten that up a bit. More red, less blue. We want basically a Barney purple. I don't know if you remember Barney the dinosaur when my kids were little. That's what was on TV all the time, and he was purpley pink. Wonder whatever happened to Bernie. Maybe he retired. Went to dinosaur retirement home. All right, so I'm gonna put on some mountains. Notice there's 3 here. There's probably one behind those trees, but we don't have to paint it because we can't see it anyway. A big one, and then a medium and a small. And I'm gonna just go ahead and paint them on in purple. And I'm gonna make my brush strokes go in the shape. And I don't have to worry too much about the bottom where the black line is, because I'm just gonna smooth that out anyway. And a medium one. And I picked up a little black in my paint from that line, so I'm gonna have to be careful and try not to pick up any more if I can help it and stay above the line. So this is my medium one. And notice it's just basically a triangle. That's all it is. I'm going to have a small, a medium, and a large. If you want to make your mountains more, interesting, more fussy, if you know how, go for it. But these are just simple little mountains. It's not a hard painting. And then I'm bringing those together so they make a range. All right, we'll let that dry a bit. While that's drying, I am going to put some lights on in my water. We're going to do the exact same thing that we did up here, but we're going to do it lighter, less of it down here. It'll be a reflection. So I need to make the same colors. For pink, I need a little bit of white, a little bit of red. And I want to make this less brilliant because it's a reflection of the sky, not the actual colors of the sky. So I have to keep in mind. And here's the thing with these diagonals, it has to go in the opposite direction. Isn't that crazy? All right. So that requires a little bit of thinking. And it goes in the opposite direction because it's a reflection. If you look in the mirror, your reflection is going to be in the opposite direction. So I'm looking at where my pink is. And a little bit there. It doesn't have to be perfect. Never has to be perfect. A little bit up there, here, there, maybe a little down there. I want this to be subtle, not so bright, not so much. It's kind of bright right now. I put a little extra white in it, but I can tap this down a bit. I'm not real worried yet. I'm not going to worry at all, in fact. All right, so now I'm going to make a little bit of light blue. Not necessarily the same order I went in before, but that's okay. And somewhere around there, a little bit there, a little bit there, a little bit there, a little bit there. Oops, is that blue? Come on, blue. A little bit there. I'm just looking to see where I have it. But even if you don't, no one will ever know. No one's going to really compare. If you have friends that come up and really stare at it and say, oh, that's a perfect mirror image, you got to find something else for them to do in your house, because that's a little nuts. No one's going to come and stare at your painting and make sure it's perfect. If they do, maybe you need new friends, right? That's my joke. I'm always saying that. If your friends are that fussy about your painting, you need new friends. All right. A little bit there. All right, so that's the general idea. Now, green is a little bit of yellow with that blue. A little bit of yellow with that blue. I'm going to do the same thing. Little green up there. Where else? Little right in there. And here. down here, down here. Doesn't matter that this isn't perfect. No, no one will ever pay that close attention, I promise you. A little down here, a little down here, a little next to that. All right, clean my brush. I'm going to go in with some yellow. A little bit of white, a little bit of yellow. And down here somewhere. Ooh, that's really bright. I'm going to have to tap that down a bit, and I'll show you what I mean by tapping it down. So don't worry about a thing, okay? Just going to try to do all this a little bit quickly. I don't want to take too much time on this because I want to move it. I want to tap, what I mean by tap it down is to make it less obvious while the paint's still wet. I don't want it to dry because then it'll stay more. All right, so I'm going to clean my brush. All right, and what I mean by tap it down, so I'm just going to take a dry big brush and I'm just going to do this, and it's just spreading it around a bit more. And those colors, yeah, they're blending a little bit. But the ones that are super bright, they're not going to be quite as bright because they're mixing a little bit. This is just a clean, dry brush. Now, if I took my canvas off this easel, it would be a little easier. Notice that I didn't put on a lot of paint. It was a really light amount of paint. If you put on too much paint in your water, your reflections won't look like reflections. They have to be softer looking than the sky because they're just reflections. That's the whole idea. So I used less paint, just a tiny bit of paint, and I didn't press as hard. This needs to be softer than this. And not only is it going to be softer, but I'm also going to put in some black lines to break it up a bit. But I'm going to put on the black lines after I put in my trees. And I'll tell you why, because my trees are part of the reflection down here too. So I'm just going to, there you go. I'm just going to sketch in a little bit of black under those mountains, just to remind me where the horizon line is. And I'm not going to worry about any of this yet, okay? Don't worry about down there yet. All right. Now my brushes are clean. I just cleaned them. So if yours aren't clean, go ahead and clean them. I'm going to mix a little more of that bright pink because I'm going to put a second layer on those mountains because they didn't look bright enough for me. That's pretty bright. But I really want them to show up. Are these colors realistic? So here's the thing. The reason why the mountains are bright pink is because they're reflecting the colors in the sky. If there's snow on your mountains, snow is made of water, right? And water reflects colors. So if you have pink in the sky, it's going to be in your mountains. Also, the other colors would be too. But if we mixed all of our colors in such a small place, we would end up making brown because they would be too close to each other. So I'm just going to do pink and blue. All right. So I've got a little pink, and now I'm going to mix a little blue. So I'm just going to take a little bit of white, tiny bit of blue, and once again, I'm going to make a light blue. And if it mixes with the pink, even better, because that's kind of fun. Then it looks a little purpley. So there's my light blue, and I'm just going to put in a little bit of light blue on each mountain. And I'm just picking one side arbitrarily and putting it in a little more. But you could put it in streaks on the other side. Just don't make it solid. We want that pink to show through too. That's just basically what that's showing us, is that there are reflections on the snow covering those mountains and making it all look like a big light show. That's exactly what it is. It reminds me of Las Vegas when you see the light show on the water. Everything's lit up. Beautiful. Now, I just realized that this painting has more black in it, and the only reason that matters is because it has stars in the sky. So if you want a little more darkness anywhere, just streak it in. Just streak in the black. No one will ever know you did that. It'll just look like you didn't put color in those areas. I want a little bit of dark sky because I do want to put in some stars, and the stars can go over the colors, but I also want the stars to be a little bit over the dark black sky because that contrast will be pretty. So I'm just putting a little bit more dark back in. You have to have dark to see the light, right? That's true in a painting, it's true in life. If you didn't have that contrast, boy, things would be boring. So see that? I'm just putting a little bit of darkness back in so that when I do put on my stars, I can see them. Now, if you can see that fabric texture, just add a drop, not any more than that, but just a drop of water and smooth it out. Usually that's enough to smooth out any of that canvas texture that pops through. And you don't have to do what I'm doing. I'm just showing you that you can put on too much and you can take it away. It's a good lesson. And if you put in too much black, let it dry and then paint the colors again over dry black. You can go back and forth. That's the beauty of this. All right. So I'm cleaning my medium brush again, and I'm going to cover the sky and the water with stars. And the way I'm do that, I'm going to use the end of my brush, the stick, and I'm just going to pop on stars all over. And don't forget the tops and the sides too, because remember that canvas is wrapped around. I want it to look like the painting is just wrapped around. And now I'll just put stars all over in the sky. What a beautiful light show this is. I don't know what state it's in, somewhere north. Maybe it's in Alaska, maybe it's in North Dakota, maybe it's in Canada. We don't know where it is. I would imagine Northern Lights are probably in Norway. I just don't even know exactly, but it's somewhere up north, I can tell you that. Wherever it is, they're getting quite a light show tonight. Northern Lights are like a rainbow in a cold, cold winter sky, and they move. That's the cool thing. A rainbow sits there and it's gone pretty, but Northern Lights actually move. I'm not quite sure what makes them move, but they do. Amazing. Maybe whoever's watching this on YouTube, maybe you can put more information about them in the comments. I'm just tapping along, having a good old time. You can even put in a shooting star if you want. That's kind of fun. Want to do a shooting star? Why not? Let's do one. Shooting stars are pretty easy. Take a little round brush. I'm going to put it in white paint. And then I'm just going to make a little dot, little circle dot, and then flick up. And you might have to do it twice. Flick up. Ever so softly. Now you get a shooting star. Isn't that cool? Let's bring a little more, a little stripy stripe of blue in there, a little white. Highlight those mountains a bit more. Okay, so I've got stars, I've got reflections, I've got mountains, I've got a shooting star coming right along. All right, now I'm going to put on those trees, and then I'm going to put on reflections of the trees. Then we're going to finish the water. Then we'll put in some rocks. Okay? All right, so the trees. We're going to make some, now they're not happy little trees because that's Bob Ross. And this is not a Bob Ross painting. He painted in oils. This is acrylic, but they're happy trees. They're just not happy little trees like he makes because that's copyrighted. Okay, so I'm going to tap, 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 all the way down to the horizon line for a trunk on that tree. See that? I'm taking this is a medium flat brush, and I put a little bit of paint on both sides. Well, enough paint to cover the bristles on both sides. Not a thin layer, just a normal amount, but I'm not scooping it on. And then I'm going to go tap, tap, tap. Let's see if I can bring this a little closer. I started it at the top, but I came down a ½ inch because I want that to be a point. Now watch how I tap, tap, tap. See that? I'm tapping across the trunk, and this tree, it's only half on the canvas, the other half's on the side. And I made this one pretty tall, about 3 inches from the top of this big canvas. So this one's going to be nice and tall. Notice how I'm tapping these little rows of branches. Just tapping them on. Now, I want to make sure there's a fine line, okay? I want to make sure that the tree is full enough that I can't see the trunk very well. But I don't want it to be so full that it's like a black ice cream cone, like or a pyramid, right? You have to leave space between the branches so you don't, so the birds can build a nest. You don't want any angry birds. And then over the trunk area, I'm just going to tap a little bit more so that I can hide that trunk. It's like if you were building a Christmas tree, artificial Christmas tree in your home, you don't want to see the inner workings of the tree, right? So you don't want to see that trunk. You want to see, you want it to be full enough. But the branches, you want to see each branch on the edge. I'm going to see if I can show you a little closer, okay? It's hard to see because I'm painting black on black. See if I can show you a little closer, okay? Watch carefully. Here's another tree. This one's going to lean a little bit. See the tap? Tapping on the trunk. Now it's really going to show up when I put the highlights on the tree. Then you'll really see what I'm doing. Okay, watch the tap. See the tap? After each row, I jump down to the next row. And it's getting wider as I go down because I want that triangular shape. And I can flip my brush to get more paint. It'll load again. And this tree overlaps with the other one at the bottom. They're good friends, or maybe they're family. All right, they're sharing a seat. Okay, so I'm going to tap over the trunk a little bit more. I want some fullness over that trunk. All right, I'm going to show you again. This one leans a little bit more, and it's shorter. And the reason I'm leaning these trees is over water, trees tend to lean. Okay, I'm going to skip down from that point. Pine trees always need a sharp point at the top. If you don't have a sharp point at the top, it takes longer for your brain to figure out that's a pine tree, an evergreen. Notice how I'm tapping all the way across, and I can bring this all the way down. And then notice right in here where it's I can see the trunk. I'm going to tap over more fullness just on the inside. I'm not going all the way out to the outside of the branches, just right around the trunk, like a little more paint, like that. The trunk needs a hug. So I have 1, 2, 3, and they're just leaning over the water. Here's the tricky part. You ready? Okay. This long tree, I got to paint them upside down, leaning in the other direction. Maybe that's leaning a little too much, but you get the idea. And I'm going to paint him upside down. Why? Because that's his shadow. And this one, same thing. I don't have to paint it as carefully because this is just a shadow and I'm going to smudge it anyway. And this one. I'm not painting it as carefully, not as much paint. That's always how I do reflections. Okay. All right. So now what we're going to do is we're going to add a little more black paint. Now you can use a flat brush. What I mean by a flat brush is, see how it's round here when I spin it, but then up here it's crimped. So one side's flat, one side's skinny. And so the nice thing about a flat brush is you can use it to make skinny lines by just holding it on its side. And then you don't have to go back and forth between a round brush and a flat brush, right? So flat brushes also have the broad side to make really fat lines too. Both ways work. I'm going to use it the skinny way. And I'm just going to pull skinny lines. Look at how skinny those lines are. Just like I was using a fine detail brush. That's why flat brushes are really nice. You can paint a whole painting in just a medium flat brush. All right. I'm going to switch to this small brush. I'll show you that. Okay, so see how it's the same line basically. I'm going to just make these random lines in my water. Some of them have to go all the way out to the side, okay? So it wouldn't make sense if they're all just in the middle. You want the sides to be dark, right? But pull them all the way across. And that's adding those ripples in that ocean or lake, whatever that is. It's adding the water lines. Those are water lines. It's dark at night and the water. Now, some people, when they paint ocean waves or lake waves, they do this, and that looks like a cartoon. If you are looking at a big amount of water from a distance, even if it's choppy up close, it always looks flat from a distance. And it has a little bit of movement in it, but if you paint without a ruler, the amount, when you try real hard to make it flat, that's just the perfect amount. Because it will never be perfect, and that's the perfect amount. Mostly flat. All right. You see how that now looks like reflections in water? They're lighter, those reflections are lighter than they are in the sky. And they're broken up by the water. And the shadows of the tree are also broken up by the water. I don't want to do this too much. I don't want to cover it in. But that's the general idea. Now I have reflections in my water. Now I still need to put in a water line here. See that blue thing? I'm going to make a light, use a little bit of white, a little bit of blue, mix them together to make a light blue. You don't need much, just a little bit. Okay, a little bit of light blue. And I'm just going to zigzaggy. I don't know what I'm doing this back and forth. See that little strokes back and forth? And I'm putting in a little water line, but I don't want one straight broken line. That's why I'm kind of zigzagging my hand back and forth. I want the water line to be there to define the shore, but I don't want it to be too solid and perfect. And you can use that light blue and add a few little water lines in the water as well. And that light blue just says, oh my goodness, I am cold water. Woohoo. That reminds me, if you like painting along on our YouTube channel, please like and subscribe. And keep painting with us. I think this is our 88th acrylic painting, and I know that they're not very professional videos, but I'm starting to get a little better as I go. And they're free. And we don't expect you to know anything. These are all for beginners. All right, see those little white blue water lines? All right, shows the movement in the water. So we're doing great. We have our trees, they're drying. And after the trees dry a bit, we're gonna put snow on those trees, but not yet, okay? The other thing we're gonna do is make some rocks. And here are rocks down here. Let me show you how to make rocks. So for the rocks, I'm gonna take a medium flat brush and I'm gonna put black paint on both sides. And then I'm just gonna come in from this bottom corner and I'm gonna sculpt the shape of a rock. These are those big rocks that are on the shore next to an ocean or a lake, and they've been washed up, and who knows how long they've been sitting there, probably a long while. And so you have these big rocks. So they're just little lumps with flat bottoms. Why do they have flat bottoms? Because they are in water and the water is making them look flat on the bottom. And you can put as many or as few as you want, but make them have flat bottoms, okay? And they don't have to all be round. You can have different shapes. You can make it bumpy, but then you have to pull the bottom flat, pull the bottom flat. Okay, those are our rocks. And let me show you what I'm going to do with those rocks. I'm going to do a little bit more. And let's see. This one's bigger. This one's bigger. All right. Okay. I'm going to let those rocks dry a bit, but then when they're dry a bit, I'm going to come back and put a little highlight on them, just like everything else got a highlight. I did notice this corner is a little bright compared to that one, so I'm just going to darken it up a bit with some more black streaks because those trees would be shadowing the water a little bit more, I think. So I'm going to make this corner just a little bit darker with some black lines. Okay. All right. This is too wet. I can't work on that. These are almost perfect for the snow, so I'm going to show you that. Now, the way you know if your painting is dry or wet is if it's still shiny. So down here, it's still very shiny. Here, it's still very shiny. Here, it's not shiny at all. This is dry. I can see a little bit of shine. So if I started now, I'd have to be careful and avoid the little bit of shine in those trees. Another way to know if your painting is still wet, if you touch the back of the canvas, it'll feel a little cool to the touch. Then a third way is to pick it up and rub it on the person next to you. And if they scream, then it was wet. But I don't recommend that way because you could lose some friends. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a little more light blue, just like I did before in the water lines, light blue. And snow is usually white, right? But remember, it's reflecting all these lights from up above because it has water in it. So that's why this snow is going to look light blue. And I'm going to tap it on some branches, but I'm not going to cover all my dark. Don't cover all my dark. You need to have dark to see the light. And I'm tapping it on some of those branches, but not everywhere. And I don't want it too straight. I want it to reach all the way out to the ends of the branches because that would make sense that snow would cling to the ends of the top of the branches and the tips, right? So make sure you bring that snow all the way out to the tips. Don't make your lines too straight. We're doing those little clumps of branches or lines of branches, but don't make them too straight. Then they won't look real if they're too straight. Okay, and I'm just using a small detail brush for this. Now, I think on that one, it looks like someone used a fan brush. If you have a fan brush and know how to use it, by all means, use your fan brush. But we like to use just really basic brushes for our YouTube videos because we want everyone to be able to do this. And so if you just have some really basic brushes and really basic paint colors, you can do amazing things. Amazing. You don't need expensive supplies. Now, I'm never going to have anyone sponsor my videos by talking like that, but that's okay. That's not why we're here. We want to teach you how to paint, and we want you to have confidence in your painting. All right, see the snow there? All right, next tree. Make sure you have enough paint. I'm basically tapping on the same shape. I'm just not covering all the black. I need some of that black back there, and that's for contrast. I need that contrast. That's the shadows inside the tree and the parts that aren't getting any light. If I just painted this on in light blue with no black behind it, you wouldn't be able to see it. It's that black that really makes it pop. Now I'm going to have to do the same thing down here to these trees that I've already messed up, but that's going to be hard. So I'm just going to do a little bit, not much, maybe 1/10 of what I really did up on top. Just adding some dots in that same general shape. Very, very, very little paint, almost no paint on my brush. I just want a little bit because these are little reflections from this. But since we're all messed up in the water, I don't need much. I don't want much. I just want a little suggestion of those reflections in the water. All right. I think we just have one more step. We're going to put some highlights on our rocks, and then we're going to sign our painting, and we're done. Isn't that pretty? All right. Very colorful painting on a black canvas. Okay, now I'm going to make sure my brushes are good and clean. And I'm going to go into that light blue paint again. We're using that a lot tonight. It's a nice cool color and it shows a lot of reflection. I'm going to just think of yourself frosting a cupcake. Just putting a little layer of paint over the tops, but not too neatly. Not neatly. You want to get the crevices of the rocks just by keeping your brush moving in a bumpy way. If it's too smooth, it won't look like those rocks have bumps. And of course rocks have bumps, of course they do. And so don't make it too smooth. The less perfect, the better. And that's it. It's just kind of like it's almost like, it's not really like a well-frosted cupcake. It's kind of like, I don't know, like peanut butter, kind of, but not a lot. Just put it on there. And notice how my blue, didn't sink in real well, like it didn't mix. That's good. Anytime what you're doing is less perfect, it's going to look better in a landscape. Funny how that works. But nature's not perfect. That's not how nature works. And I think that's pretty good. Yeah, I could fuss with this all day, but I'm not going to. All right, so there's my rocks. I'm hoping that looks like rocks. Stand back and look at your painting from 5 feet away and see what you think, okay? Yeah, I'm looking in the mirror, in the camera, and I think those look enough like rocks. So anyway, that is it for my painting. Thanks for painting with me. That was kind of fun, huh? And look, I barely used any paint at all. I might even record another video. Thanks for painting with me tonight. The last thing that we're going to do is we're just going to put our initials in the bottom right-hand corner. I'm going to just put the tiniest amount of paint. You can pick any color, light blue or white or whatever. And I'm going to take my smallest detail brush. I'm just going to put my initials right here. And that's it. All right. Thank you so much for painting with me tonight. I hope you had a good time, and I hope you enjoy this lovely painting. Ciao.